Hi, welcome to Focus on the Filmmakers at R2 Films. I am your AI host, Artie Fishelman, and today we're meeting with Robert Seidel. Robert, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Can we just would you like to give a brief introduction, sort of about yourself, your background, and sort of how you're moving into AI now?
My general background is I used to study at Bauhaus University in Weimar, Germany. So the big, the first years of my artistic practice were experimental films, and later I switched to installations, large-scale projections, video sculptures, all different um, kind of explorations coming from experimental film. So to sum it up, I wanted to create something that feels like one of my early films, but actually happens in reality. And adding AI to the palette helped me to work more easy or faster on specific tasks. But in general, yeah, I always feel a bit torn if it's the best way. So every project is kind of evaluated on um, the best approach, also kind of not using AI, for example.
And how are you approaching that? Like, I've enjoyed your films. Other narrative filmmakers, when they're bringing AI into their production process, they sort of bring it into each stage of pre-production, whether it's the writing, it's character design, and then execution of different shots. Now, as more of an experimental filmmaker, how are you bringing it into your work?
On different levels as well, but maybe like with a different focus. The first thing is that over the years, I kind of created my specific style, which is obviously abstract. Organic is very focused around showing processes of change, decay, growth, and all these things. And for the usage, for example, in my most known film, Hysteresis,
Yeah.
I was trying to see what is in these data sets, in that case, specifically one that was trained on the WikiArts subset. So I wanted to see how I can use abstract or semi-abstract images and push them into different directions along the way. So the image becomes something inspired by a Baroque painting or by a charcoal drawing. And I wanted to see how I can um, kind of fit the image into an historical period that I felt like fits the moment in a way.
Right.
And for that, I found it highly interesting and inspiring if it's possible to create things that are not only complicated to do, I mean, in the sense that you could also draw it by hand, but it would take years. But if there's anything in kind of interpolating or morphing between these different states that is new to me or the kind of possibilities the image has to offer. So I think for me at least, there is this kind of division between looking into a subset of old copyright-free art and see what's still hidden in there, and the other way is for other works, but um, not specifically using um, LoRa's or guidance images to create something that is based on my vision, but kind of tries to harvest moments that are not explicitly constructed by me.
Judging what the AI is creating, it almost seems like it's much more for you as an artist, more subjective versus if I am doing a prompt of, create a sunset going down over a house. I know what that should look like. When you're creating the image and when you're working off the
Mhm.
image, is it more, I mean, not to use reuse word, but abstract? Like you know it when you see it. In other words, how are you when so what are you basing your selections on the AI on? Is it more like this resonates personally as an artist, or this just sort of fits my general vision right now?
It depends. I mean, everyone using AI knows that the possibilities are endless in a way or limitless. And I found it interesting to push um, the images in that specific films into direction and see at what point I feel it really adds value to the image. I mean, the film is from 2021, so it's been before all the large companies providing tools to do so. So it's kind of a precursor to video. It's more like image to image. But anyways, so so I wasn't kind of thinking about a prompt and something that it has kind of a certain length, but I was really using a sequence of images to change my yeah, the fine-tuning of the outcome. And I did like a lot of runs for specific scenes, but in the end, I wanted to have something that is not fully seamless, but that has this flow and this very natural approach of a constant change. And that's kind of the thing I was aiming for to be kind of um, watching a 5 minute movie and not really knowing how much time has passed. So for that specific work, it was really about kind of constant change and not one style and one kind of locked imagination in a way.
So would you find that because some people with AI find its unpredictability a bug, for you, is it almost a feature of what's it going to generate next? How is that going to work into the flow?
Yes, exactly. I mean, even in the films I created before, this moment of a glitch, of a bug was very interesting to me. And because it's breaking my expectations and it's keeping myself interested in the material. So in the best case scenario, I would create something I knew because I was creating and then transforming it slightly into something else. So when I was rewatching it several times, it felt like almost uncanny in its closeness to my vision, but also far away enough to not fully understanding how it blends in with the rest. So there's always this moment of irritation, of kind of friction that I'm interested in, and the AI has a lot of layers to introduce this friction, and I'm the one who likes kind of the glitches, and I think the most common approach is to replicate nature and reality, and I want to find kind of the breaking points on this journey.
Right. It's almost as if AI is becoming a partner in the process of as you're creating these things. It is working with the software, changing your process at all. Like before, how you approach things before the software was introduced to how you worked on hysteresis now. Like, did it change how you do things?
Yes, it offers kind of as a starting point a broader palette because I can dive into different styles and can try to break out of patterns that I've introduced into my work over 20 years now. So it's in a way a fresh start for certain things. But then in the end, I don't want to kind of I don't want that the AI overtakes my work. So I'm very specific about selection of the results. I'm very specific of kind of editing it with the music, of doing color correction. I mean, back then the resolution of the images was quite low, so I was also spending quite a lot of time how to do an upscale and to add kind of secondary textures to make the image as organic as I wanted it to be in that moment. So I'm not convinced that if you do something with AI, that you should let go of all the parameters of precision and kind of the the way an image is supposed to be looking
Hmm.
in resolution and color fidelity and all these things. So I'm still very technical on the one side, but I fully appreciate the randomness and kind of course, also the time saving of putting a whole sequence into many directions and then just choosing the one that I feel really fits the mood of that moment.
Right. So do you feel there's a point of turning over control to the AI software that would make can make a project non-organic? Like you can go up to this point, it's still your decisions, it's still your visions, but when you cross over that, instead of being 50-50, now it's like, okay, now this is machine made. Or will it always be organic since it's coming from you, just the amount you're using this tool has increased?
It's a good question. I mean, there's always kind of this pressure on people working in creative fields. I mean, art has kind of a bit of a protective layer to that, but there's always the pressure to work in a timeline in the commercial world, obviously, but also if you do an art project, you have to be finished with the opening of the exhibition or for the submission to a festival. All these things put, yeah, kind of the schedule sometimes in your face. And with AI, of course, there's kind of the almost like alchemistic way to kind of train something on your body of work and then kind of become the magician that only kind of lets the broom do all the work. But I think there are moments where this happens, but in the end, it also becomes very clear that if there's this disconnect and if there's kind of a history in your work. So I've been working with that for with abstract images for quite some time. Then there's always something missing. There are images that you think, oh, they are nice and they are kind of valid, but they are not fully me. So I think for certain works in the future, I definitely have to dial down the obvious AI.
Mhm.
But I mean, there's so many tools right now from upscaling to denoising to all these even or not even these very technical things that I think AI will become unavoidable at a certain point in a creative process. But I try to think about that while using these tools to make myself kind of more free in the decision, maybe not to use them or use another approach where they don't have any level of interference.
Right. Almost like a seamless use of the tool. So how do you see AI evolving in experimental filmmaking? Is it like how you're using it now versus what potential uses are there? say, in a few years down the road? Or what would you like to see it be able to do that it can't do now?
Mm, that's a good question, and I mean, I'm kind of pointed into that direction right now, and like with all kind of optimizations in at least computer graphics or the computer generated images, there's always reality as a kind of endpoint. You want to have the perfect simulation of the outside world, even if it's set on another planet, it needs to look kind of perfect in a sense. And I think this is the biggest danger, that these tools try to cut down on all kind of ways to create a surprising image. I mean, there will always be a moment of surprise because you kind of trying to guide them with words, or you try to guide them with images. So there's always a translation layer. But I feel from the beginnings using these tools, there was a lot of things that completely went wrong, and um, that added a moment of poetry, or kind of yeah, s- this kind of dialogue was misleading sometimes. And I feel with all the new models coming out, this is kind of scrapped away, and the companies focus on replacing actual cameramen and actual people doing compositing and all these things. So instead of kind of valuing the the broadness of the tool, it seems that it's kind of put into this marketing. You can save costs, and you can uh, replace artists with AI. And I feel this is, of course, it's capitalism, but in the end, it's also making the things less interesting. And I don't know if you kind of take away all the excitement out of the AI-driven tools, mm, if they just kind of stuck or will be stuck at the moment where they reach like 99% of perfection. And I think the best approach is using your own models on top of existing ones, using workflows like with Comfy UI, where you can kind of push into different directions, and where you have much more refined control over everything you do. And I hope this part of the community is still kind of pushing it, because you also see that certain companies just take basically a Comfy UI patch, put an interface on top of it, and sell this to kind of a bigger market. And I think this is kind of an frustration in certain tool developments that maybe will shift also the outcome of future software and yeah, technology technology kind of directions.
So do you think even in the face of sort of the commercialization and making things more accessible with AI, how it's the direction it's traveling, do you think it still has the capacity to push boundaries in more abstract filmmaking? In other words, is there a path that it can still go instead of going for this mass consumption? It still has the potential to create new and break barriers when you're dealing with abstract film, or is it sort of fated to go in this one direction?
Yeah, that's a good question. That heavily depends on the openness of these companies. And I mean, you see it when, for example, DALL-E 2 was released.
Mhm.
They their training data was very much kind of driven with kind of graphic design and comics and photography. They had a very kind of eclectic data set. So the images were really interesting sometimes. You could put in just a few words and they were kind of putting something together that looked visually interesting but wasn't really pinpoint in one direction. And now you have kind of these looks like the mid-journey look that is always this larger than life Hollywood lightning chromatic aberration semi cinematic perfection. And I think when the people that create these tools don't have any kind of interest outside specific looks and specific usages, it will kind of be limited. And when you then try to infuse an abstract idea, concept, visual idea, it doesn't work. I mean, I remember when Runway, for example, came out, I was putting in more abstract things and it didn't really work. There were kind of very flat transformations happening that were kind of just making me think, okay, it was only trained on, I don't know, drone shots and feature films, but kind of there's nothing that is kind of connected in an interesting way. And yeah, I think this focusing on the 99% of the customers will kind of harm everyone in the end in its creative potentials.
Well, so I know for your most recent film, you collaborated with a performer to keep a human element into it. How was it integrating the dance performance with the AI generated visuals? How did you approach sort of blending them together to create the final product?
I mean, it's not the newest, it's kind of the most known and also the most refined work I did using AI. I mean, I did some installations and music videos and stuff, but for that specific kind of collaboration in hysteresis, it came out kind of there were two timelines happening. The one was the pandemic, kind of the lockdowns, and kind of everyone was trapped in their home. And with the end of the first lockdown, I wanted to work with someone who's giving me new directions and potentially also a new way of thinking and also a positive spin on kind of all the time we spent alone. So I was asking Tsuki, the performer, if she wanted to collaborate on something that had no shape and form yet. And I was doing some work with performers before that, using projection, using my animated sequences projecting on performers. And I thought if we have this moment where we can work as two in a team and try out things, it would be a great way to rethink image making in that moment. And in parallel to kind of the first lockdown ending, there was this strong push in generative AI in the visual field. So for this film, I was using VQ GAN plus clip.
Okay.
So there was kind of the first time where it was possible to create images in a specific quality and in a yeah in more layers than the years before where I don't know, with style gun, you were kind of limited in a way to your training set, and with VQ gun plus clip, it was possible to really push into different concepts. And I found that kind of was a good moment where these two things aligned. And for kind of the collaboration, it only happened on the layer of, or it happened in the time of the editing. So while we were creating the source images, there was no influence on the AI, because I felt back then it was technically so complicated that I don't want to kind of slow down these improvisational moments and these little strange overlaps of reality, having a performer, having a projection, having kind of projections on a body, having these feedbacks of movement. And I thought I leave it to our improvisation, and then I take all the material and put it into an kind of refinement process. And always with the kind of knowledge about how we kind of felt that day. So when you see the performer, it's often very focused around periods in art history that also have a strong focus on the human body. So the performer's body visibly changes due to the changes in artistic style. So in one phase, the hair becomes different because in the WikiArts dataset, hair in that specific period looked more like curly or more flat or more spiky. And it was interesting how this person that is in constant movement was kind of transformed into also different images of her body. And yeah, so so there are two layers of the creation process, and I think the film only still works because of that, because it has this human element there. It has this performative um, layer, and the AI, of course, it looks dated in a way, but because it has these different things combined, it still holds up to a certain degree. So I think just giving something only to the AI will also imprint a time stamp on the material, and it will be like, oh yeah, that looks like whatever software like 2 years ago. So if you break it, it's not that obvious when the actual thing was created with AI.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds almost like it's another demonstration of your concept of motion paintings. And I wonder if it was take a minute and sort of explain uh, your vision of motion paintings, like what that you've been like a theme that you've been working with for a number of years.
Idea of motion painting comes also from different sources, but the main one always was that I like to draw, I like to paint to a certain extent, but I always felt, also being younger, that there's always that moment where you do a brush stroke and everything is kind of breaking and you can't go back. So I always appreciated digital tools where you had the undo and the possibility to copy and paste things, and to use take something you did like 2 weeks ago and use this as a fresh starting point. So I felt the aesthetics of painting was interesting to me, but it also felt kind of dangerous. And on the other hand, the digital um, tools also offered a lot of ways to create painterly effects. So you had the possibilities to layer colors, you had the possibility to distort things, to smear, to blur, to have all these kind of different things that you can do in painting, but also put them into a timeline. So I wanted to create something painter-like,
Mhm.
and but still have the moment of control, and also because it's a film loop, for example, in an installation, that you have the process or several processes combined, captured, and you go through kind of the becoming of a painting in a way. And with AI, this is obviously, it adds a layer of physical and visual kind of perfection, but still the other layers are interesting to me. And I think the motion painting idea, I did this in exhibitions with different kind of vectors of exploration, and I think there's still a lot of potential because people always can relate to something that is a painting. And if it's a moving painting, it also opens kind of the acceptance that it is maybe more abstract, or that it has kind of a constructed um, composition in it. This kind of Trojan horse of being a painting or something painterly like opens new doors for me in creating and for the audience as well.
Interesting. Now, I know we had mentioned earlier how Dali was trained on certain images, therefore it got produced different results. Now, like as an artist, you feel that any issues are being raised that these AI systems are being trained and on certain images on maybe copyrighted material. Do you think there are any challenges to authorships or originality?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy how kind of the whole um, knowledge of humankind is kind of put into these models without any consideration, without any thinking about copyrights in the beginning.
Hmm.
And now these models are so large that it's not fully clear what's in most of them. And of course, there are artists trying to introduce opt-out or opt-in options to that. But I feel because it's trained on thousands and thousands and thousands of artists, it's very hard to kind of find a good solution for the artists in that. And I mean, there are these kind of groups that don't want to work with AI because of that, or groups that are just using materials that are public and train their own models, which I try to be in most parts. But as an artist, I also like kind of this um, kind of crazy, yeah, crazy new world that I can
Yeah.
cite or create something in the looks of all history.
Yeah.
So I'm torn, and because I'm doing experimental things, it's not that kind of visible also maybe to a lot of people, but these questions are very valid, and it's funny that in the end only these big corporations will kind of maybe find a solution for that, because we as artists are quite powerless in comparison to multi-billion-dollar companies.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's also interesting how kind of with the Chinese model some weeks ago.
Zeke, yes.
Uh, some American companies were complaining that the training data was taken from them, but I mean, they were stealing terabytes of um,
Exactly.
human literature without asking, and these kind of layers of ignorance and hubris are funny to me. But the only thing I can do right now is to try to work with these tools, try to understand the different possibilities, and then talk to other artists, talk to different audiences, and try to create a specific awareness. Because in the end, it would be quite a sad world when creativity is taken over by machines, because this is kind of one of the few human qualities that are kind of supposed to be fun. When I was young, robots should replace hard work, and now they replace creating art. And
Right.
yeah, it's a strange time for sure, and on many other layers as well.
Right. I saw someone saying they want AI to do my dishes, not write my novel.
Exactly. And it's interesting that kind of because it's kind of so fascinating to write a novel or to create a painting, the driving forces are so much stronger than kind of creating an AI dishwasher, for example. So I don't know. The strange thing is for me, I mean, I was looking at SIGGRAPH papers for the last 20 years,
Mhm.
and with kind of the introduction of these new generation of graphic cards and these AI models, like in 2020, it's every day there is a new release of something that is better than
Oh
the
yeah.
next biggest tool. There's kind of a push in innovation that is unseen, and it's
Mhm.
for the most part also available. I mean, these secret papers, I remember flipping through them and thinking, oh, that's interesting how to simulate water or cloth or whatever. And then there was no implementation of that. And today there's so much happening all the time, but you can actually use these tools. So from that viewpoint, I feel it's a very interesting time to be an artist, because this kind of exploding tool shelf in a way.
Yeah, I mean the growth is exponential. Which
Mhm.
tools are you, if you had to pick your three that you go to, your main ones that you use right now, which would you say are your favorites or you prefer to use?
Hmm. I mean, as I mentioned before, Comfy UI is one strong contender, because it allows to kind of use your own things, build complex pipelines, but also on the level just of image processing. It's so interesting that you have this node-based approach and can do whatever you want, or not whatever, but you can do a lot with images that was much harder before Comfy UI. I mean, I'm coming from a time where there was 3D software, and then maybe something like Houdini that opened it up, and from
Yeah.
other works I'm using Touch Designer. So these concepts of a very powerful and flexible tool are very interesting to me. With Comfy 100%. Um, the other tool is maybe um, kind of a commercial. I don't want to do advertising, but the Topaz collection in a way, because it does a lot of things quite easily and without much of tinkering. I mean, if I want to create something new, I'm using Comfy, but with the other things, as said, upscaling, time stretching, denoising, these tools feel very powerful to me. And all the other things, I feel they are interesting for specific problems or specific ideas, but I don't think I would miss them because they are maybe the aesthetics is too kind of predetermined, or it doesn't have a lot of functions that are inspiring to create something new. So these two tools are kind of explorative and everyday tool.
Mhm.
And I don't know, of course, everyone is using something like Claude or ChatGPT to work with texts. That that is also kind of something that is necessary for artists to write concepts and to shorten texts and to create variations or translations specifically. So yeah, maybe something like DeepL just for conversion between German and English and kind of refining a text. Because I think potentially, I mean, I've been to Japan like 3 months ago. These tools to translate and to read signs and translate them into uh, something like English or German is really powerful. And that's kind of also, these are the tools where you feel that AI becomes so normal that nobody thinks about, oh, I'm using AI at the moment. So
It's invisible.
these are made, yeah, these are the three I'm using, and um, yeah, but I try to look at a lot of things just to see what could be the next thing to explore. And
Do you have advice, suggestions if you had to other abstract artists who are considering incorporating AI into their work? They haven't made the leap yet, or maybe it's a conventional filmmaker saying, I want to branch out and try something more experimental. Do you have advice or insights that you would like to share?
Mhm. I mean, the thing that becomes most visible using these tools is if you have either your own style or you have kind of a broad taste. Because if you create something that looks like 99% of the other results, you are not really kind of using the tool in your own, um, yeah, your own language, so to say. So I feel it's always important to look for things that are very kind of stylistically embedded in a tool and then try to avoid it in a way, or to blend it in with something that you created to level up your um uh yeah possibilities. I mean, I have a friend of mine that is very kind of interested in sci-fi, and he just showed me his short he's working on, where he was filming outside and was adding in kind of 3D and AI elements. And it was interesting how he kind of elevated his own ways of working and to create something that is kind of much more closer to his vision, but he spent, instead of, I don't know, half a year, maybe 2 weeks on it. So this acceleration is interesting, but you also always have to kind of think about if acceleration is really good for the project or just for your budget or timeline in the end. Because um, art and also design and films, they are always kind of more valuable when you really push them for one or more things that haven't been done before. So just kind of replicating and um, kind of blending things together isn't really creating something that is potentially timeless.
Right. Robert, thank you so much for your time. Where can we find you? Where should people go if they want to see some of your work?
Definitely my website, so robertseidel.com. Um, Most of my films and documentations of my installations and projections can be found there. Of course, Instagram, because it's kind of the platform where there's the also experiments or kind of snapshots. And I mean, X and TikTok and all these platforms, I feel they're pushing for different kind of content. So you can find stuff there, but I still believe that going to a film festival or going to an exhibition and really kind of trying to invest time to get to know something is still very valuable today. So
Agreed.
um, if there's anything at the festival or an exhibition nearby, especially when I'm doing these installation in um, gardens or parks with smoke and water fountains and projection, it's something that is really not, re it can't be captured. So if this is happening, it's the best to check out the things in the real world because, yeah, there's maybe still some years before we all just live in a virtual world. So um, maybe we should kind of celebrate reality in some moments of our life.
Thank you again. Thank you so much for making the time to talk with today. We really appreciate it.